Hello and welcome back to my channel, the place for online business owners to get support and help with their marketing. Today is a very special video where you're going to be actually getting a sneak peek into our recent podcast episode. You're going to get the full video version of what has been uploaded to podcasting software like Apple and Spotify. This episode is 30 minutes long and is myself and the amazing Avril Anderson talking about the importance of building systems into your business. I learned the lesson far too late that it is so important to make sure that you have organisation in your business even when it's just you. So I'm going to stop here and hand over to a previous version of myself and Avril to tell you more. I am joined by Avril Anderson to talk about how to go from being a stressed out solopreneur to a confident CEO using systems. Thank you so much, Avril, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. I've been following Avril for a little while on Instagram and we've had a couple of messages back and forth about getting her on the show, and I'm so happy it's finally happened, because getting some insight in that time into your content and seeing what you do, I'm definitely sold, and I think a lot of people listening are going to have their eyes opened, even from what we've said before we started recording today, some of the thoughts around what systems are, what processes are. But I'm going to hand over to you at this point and ask you to just give a little bit more of an explanation around what you do and how you help business owners.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I love talking about this, so you'll have a hard time keeping me quiet. But yeah, so I'm a CEO coach, and people often say, what is a CEO coach? And it really is exactly what you talked about, Bethan. It's about helping business owners, female entrepreneurs, step into that role of CEO, depending on what that means to them. So being a CEO will mean something to everyone different. But one of the common factors is when we actually progress in our businesses, when our businesses start to grow and we come out of that startup phase into that growth phase, there's personal change that takes place. And then there's also process and business change that needs to go with that. And a big part of that is actually looking at the three key things that I say make up that whole business ecosystem, which is mindset, strategy, and systems. And all of them need to work in tandem to support you and your business to grow. So I come in and I support female entrepreneurs to really own that role of CEO and all of the key things that go into becoming a confident CEO in your business.
Wow, I love that. And I find that fascinating because even as myself, I would struggle to identify as a CEO, even though that's what I do and that's what I am. And I'm sure a lot of people listening will feel the same, whether it's because of that idea of imposter syndrome or whether it's just that their business has maybe grown quicker than they anticipated and they're scrambling to play catch up with this idea that they're now not just a freelancer, not just self-employed, but a CEO of their own company. I wonder whether that's something that you've dealt with or that you've come across with your clients in the past.
Oh, 100%. So when I say CEO, if I ask you to close your eyes for a second and say, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you? What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say CEO?
An old boss of mine who would be in a swanky suit all the time. She was incredible, very inspirational, but seemed far out of my reach.
Absolutely. So CEOs for people, generally it tends to be male, white, middle-aged. The fact that yours is a female in itself is a differentiator, but it's that concept that we put CEO as something external to us. As you said, a CEO is somebody who is usually at the top of a large corporation or organization, managing a lot of staff, usually with a nice salary to go with it, but also with a lot of pressure and stress. So my purpose and my mission is to redefine what CEO means. What does it mean to be a CEO? And it doesn't have to be that sort of mindset belief of actually it's beyond my reach or it's something that is not me, because we can be the CEO. We just have to define what that looks like for us. And absolutely, as you've said, actually getting people to make that mindset shift towards actually, okay, it's not just me in my business anymore, or even if it is just still you and you don't yet have a team supporting you, or you maybe have one or two team members, you can still be the CEO of your business because you're making decisions from that place of future self. And I always say you have to be to become, and it's really working first on that mindset piece with entrepreneurs and female business owners to actually say, okay, how would the CEO of this business make that decision? How would you, as you step into that role of leader in this business, make that decision? Because you have to be that person and embody that person to become that person.
Wow, that one quote you mentioned there really resonated with me, that you have to be to become. I think it's so true. So many people work around affirmations and visualizations. And I think that's a really key missing part is seeing themselves as not only successful and happy and rich and all these things that they ask for, but also the boss and the CEO of their business, and framing themselves as what they've always seen as other. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So moving on then, we now know what a CEO is and who they are and how it can be anybody. I really want to find out more about your take on processes and systems. It's such a difficult topic to broach because there is so much that can be encapsulated by processes and systems, and so much misunderstanding around the concept, especially in the online business world, I feel. So I'm going to hand over to you to share your expertise on this subject.
Yeah. So again, similar as what I said, what comes to mind when I say CEO? If I said to you, what comes to mind when I say system? Most people will actually be talking about a piece of software that they use in their business. But I often see your system is the overarching umbrella under which everything else sits. So in your business as itself operates as a system. Okay. There's lots of moving parts that come together. And within that, we have other layers of systems. So I will say, like, you'll have sales systems, marketing systems, all of those great things that come together to give you the end result of running a fulfilling, profitable business. And the key thing there really to go back in is that systems are actually that overarching umbrella. And it's not just one piece of your business, but it's what we need to create the framework to build a sustainable, scalable business on. So one of the big things that people will say to me is, and I quote this all the time, is, but it's only me in the business. I don't need to write it down. It's in my head. And I'm like, that is fantastic that you know exactly how you create your content every month and you know how you generate leads within your business. But if you then want to expand your business and you want to bring on team members, unless they're a mind reader, it's going to be really hard for them to be able to replicate what you're doing in your business. So actually having systems in place and actually writing them down is the first step. And one step that I say you really should be trying to take as early on in your business as possible. So it really is the framework on which we build the business. It's the structure with which we can do things repeatedly and get the same output. But, it's one of those core things that most people put it in last. So we focus on the sexy front end stuff, so the sales and the marketing, which is fundamental to get clients into our business. But often the back end sort of processes, systems, boring stuff kind of gets overlooked for no other reason generally than it feels uncomfortable for a lot of people. They're not used to actually mapping out how things are done or putting processes in place. So it's really looking at actually putting those two things side by side when you're starting your business and giving your back end systems as much attention as your front end. Because what I see a lot is businesses start up and we're in that startup phase and we're doing everything ourselves, right? We're muddling through, we're doing it all, we're doing a really good job. And then all of a sudden we start to attract more clients and more clients and more clients, and we start to scale. And then it starts to get really overwhelming because what we're doing is putting people into our business through the front end of our business, but we don't have a back end set up to serve them and give them that exceptional client experience that we know they deserve and we want to give, not for any other reason than the fact that we didn't actually set it up.
Yeah. And I wish I had a time machine to go back and be in day one of my business and planning some of those systems out more formally, rather than falling into the easily done mistake where now it's years into this progress and there's some teething issues of trying to get those systems and processes in place where they never existed before. So I have a follow-up question on this, because you said you think people should do it early. How early do you think businesses should be starting this process? When is the right time to take pen to paper or to process map on their PC the systems for the business?
The minute they open the doors.
I love that you said that. That's amazing.
The minute they start marketing their services for people to work with them, that in itself is a process. Okay, that's a marketing process. So what are you doing to generate leads in your business? So are you posting in social media every week? So what process do you do? Just lifting out your notebook, mapping it out. Okay, on a Monday, I spend an hour a week writing out my content. Then I open up my scheduler, I put all my content in, I plan it, and then at the end of every week, I go back and I track how many likes, follows, and shares I've had. Write it down, put it in a Google Doc, put it in, a drive somewhere, and just save it, so that when you do start to evolve the process moves forward, you bring on team members, then you can just keep updating it, but you have a starting point. And that's what I call a minimum viable process. So it doesn't have to be a big fancy document. It doesn't have to have lots of stages. What are the step-by-step things you are doing in your business to get that output? And if you have time, or if you have something like a screen recorder on your computer, which most of us will have, record yourself doing it and save it as well.
Yeah, amazing. I think that is going to be such a good training tool. Like, there's your inbuilt training set up and ready to go. Here's all your videos on how I personally do everything. Copy it.
It's exactly it. So people aren't mind readers. And I always say, if you're going to bring a team member into your business, give them what they need to be successful. And if you like things done a certain way, then record yourself doing it, note it down, and then hand that over to people. It reduces that hand-holding phase when you bring somebody new into the business. You can sort of say, okay, here's all the software that you need to know how to use. Here's all the processes we have. And you know what? Just go and have a look through them. And if you have any questions, come back and ask.
Yeah, that sounds like a dream. And I wonder your thoughts on this idea. My opinion is that personally, a lot of business owners in this day and age are not formally business educated. Maybe they didn't get to that point in their career where they were involved in process mapping and keeping on track of some of that stuff, which is brilliant news. And it's great that people of all kind of education levels and all corporate levels of experience are able to set up their own business. I wonder whether you think, as I do, that people are almost copying what they see. And because they can't see the back end of their competitors' business, of the influencers that they love to follow so much, it's almost that they only copy the front end because that's what's at their fingertips.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting one, actually, because I always say that business should always be born of passion and purpose, never of experience or where you've come from or what formal experience you have. Most of us as business owners, I see a lot of business owners who never managed a team, and then all of a sudden they're recruiting team members. So they're like, how do I do this? What do I do? They've never had to actually build up a business from scratch. So actually having those resources available to them to know how to start to market the business, to know how to get sales. And I think it's fantastic to be able to empower people to do that. And I'm not actually 100% sure that it's a case that they can't see that in other people's businesses for how to replicate it for themselves. I think it's more a case of, it's a case, we want the sale, okay, the focus is on get my first client in through the door, know that I've got a profitable business. And often people will say to me, I just wanted to make sure I had a business before I started investing all this time and putting processes in place, and actually focusing on the stuff that was going to get customers through the door, and then looking at the back end process. But it's one of those things that there's lots of content out there, right, around how to actually generate leads, how to sign clients, how to serve clients, how to do X, Y, and Z. And thankfully, over the last number of years, we've seen more content available on actually how to build up process and systems in your business to support that, because ultimately that will be what will give you long-term scalable sustainability. And people say to me, well, what do you mean by that, Avril? I'm like, well, if you're constantly manually still doing things in your business, if you're manually onboarding clients, if you're manually posting your content on social media, that is time that you don't need to be spending doing that. That is time that you're out of your zone of genius, and it's not sustainable. And you can't do that unless you're trading more hours in the day to do those tasks or to serve those clients. Your business can only grow so big. And it's a whole different ceiling then. Take out the glass ceiling, it becomes a system ceiling then that we can't scale beyond that, because we're actually held back by the time that we have, because we're spending our time in the wrong places.
Brilliant. One other thing that I've noticed in the sphere of online business owners is this obsession with productivity. And everyone's got their own choice, whether it be time blocking, whether it's obsessive to-do lists. That's my personal favorite. But productivity is such a keen talking point. I don't know whether you've heard, and if you haven't, you should go and check it out, of the book called Working Hard or Hardly Working by Grace Beverly, or influencer turned author, I should say. And it's all about this idea of insane productivity. We think we can work around the clock, this hustle culture that's not realistic, and how productivity comes in waves. But I'm sure organization plays a key factor in that. And I'm sure that in their own way, to-do lists and time blocking are systems of their own. I'd love to hear your thoughts around productivity.
Productivity, yeah, it's absolutely something that I cover off a lot with clients and talk about a lot in general, because I am absolutely against hustle culture. I think it is something that we need to abandon. We need to stop wearing as a badge, and we need to understand that it's not sustainable. Hustling leads to burnout and overwhelm, and we want to grow businesses that are here for the long term. And hustle for me, and I've felt the effects of actually burnout due to hustle before. So I'm very passionate about no hustle. So what I am passionate about is ensuring that with the time that you have available to you and the time that you want to work, that you are using that in the best possible way to get the best possible results. So productivity for me is really important. And it's something that I do talk about in terms of actually looking at how and where you're spending your time. And that is the first place I say to people, start with, actually identify where your time is going. So I always say to somebody, what we think we can do in a day, we can't. So I think there's a great saying, we overestimate what we can do in a day, but underestimate what we can do in a month, because on average, we as individuals underestimate how long it takes to complete a task by 30%. So if you are backing your diary back to back every single day and not leaving breathing space, it's going to lead to that overwhelm of, I'm not working fast enough, I need to get to the next stage, I need to get to the next task, and oh my goodness, and then we start skipping tasks. So I always say, start and look at and understand how you're currently spending your time. So actually time track. Honestly time track too. So that's the key thing, is actually honestly time track and actually look at where your time is being spent, and then identify, are those tasks that you needed to do as the CEO of your business, embodying that CEO mindset and moving out of the doer into designer or visionary role. Did you really need to be the person doing that task? And I have a nice little exercise that I tell people to go and do, and I'm sure many people will have heard of it, but I call it the love it, loathe it, or do it exercise. So when you look at all those tasks in your diary, what tasks did you actually do that you loathe doing, that you actually really don't want to do, but you think you have to do? What tasks did you do that you love doing? So you don't mind doing them, you love them. You don't necessarily need to be the one doing them, but you love doing them. And then look at the do it task. So if you're a coach, nobody else can show up and coach your clients, right? Okay, so you have to do that. That is you, and you only can do that. And then I always say, start with outsourcing the stuff that is on your loathe it list first. Get that stuff off your plate as the CEO of your business and focus on the key tasks that are actually revenue generating, impact generating tasks. And if they aren't falling into those buckets, then you need to either automate or delegate those tasks, because you as the CEO don't need to be and shouldn't be doing them. But often people will say, I just don't feel, I've got to the end of the day and I feel like I've done loads, but I can't actually articulate what I've actually achieved to move my business forward. And I'm sure we've all had days like that. And that's what I say, that's busyness over productivity. Busyness and productivity are not the same thing. And often we can get caught up in the doing and forget that. So it's really looking at, my top tip would be looking at your day or your week ahead. So I say to people, do a power hour on a Friday or a Sunday, map out your top 3 for the week ahead, break that down into the core tasks that you need to do for the week, and then plan those into your diary, leaving breathing space.
I love that. And you mentioned the top 3, and although I know this and I love it, and since I discovered it, use it daily, I'd love if you could expand on that a little bit for our listeners and explain what exactly the top 3 means.
Yeah, so for me, for different people, it will mean different things, but it's really identify every month, top 3 tasks for each month. Then I break down into every week the top 3 that contribute to those top 3 for the month. And then every day I'll break that down further into what are the top 3 tasks that I need to focus on today to move me towards achieving my goals. So any task that is in your diary as a business owner should always be related to achieving your goals. And if you don't have any goals, then that's where you need to go back and start. If you don't have clear defined goals that you're working towards and you're taking action towards, then you need to go back and really start to look at that. And those top 3 should always be tasks that are going to move your business forward. And it's always about prioritizing them when you are in that flow of energy. So we really want to focus the big tasks when our energy is at its highest. So often I see people coming in and starting their day by checking Instagram, checking their emails, checking all the stuff that is actually not big business impact moving tasks. So we really want to take out the distractions in your day and really group all those smaller, less energy requiring tasks together so that you can actually focus on those towards the end of the day and really get stuck into that deep work at the start of the day.
I'm going to have to reshuffle my day, because I definitely am guilty of emails the first thing I look at in the morning before I touch anything else. And that makes so much sense, because if ever I've been too busy to look at them through the day and left them till last thing, I do feel like they're cleaned out significantly. Okay, thank you so much for that. One thing that I want to add that I tend to do with my to-do list that I absolutely love is I brain dump all the tasks that I know need to be done for the business, not necessarily by me, but all the tasks that I know need to be done and full stop. And I go through each point and go, do I need to do this? or can somebody else do it for me? And do I need to do this today? Or can it be done another day? And it's become my go-to in how I decide what's number one priority of being done. And sometimes, of course, you fall into that habit then of doing the busy work, the things that need to be done that day instead of forward planning. But my God, does it help with your management of all of your tasks and dealing with who's going to do what versus writing out a 20 long to-do list and going, I'll do all of those today, because that's not realistic.
100% it is, and that's such a good approach to it, is actually writing out, getting everything out of your head. Because as entrepreneurs, not only do we have a lot of tabs open on our computer, we have a lot of tabs open in our head too, right? So it's actually getting out everything that's in your head, what you think you need to be doing, and this element of moving away from I should be doing that, I should be doing that, actually getting it out of your head and writing it down, and actually looking at it and saying, did I need to do that task? Or do I need to do that task? And if it's a task that you find yourself writing down every day or every week, then the chances are you can probably automate it to some degree, or you can delegate it. And I always say automate before you delegate. You should never waste talent on something a piece of software can do. So often I see entrepreneurs just passing things over to their VA or their team. Yeah. But there's an element and a phase that comes before that, that is, can I automate that? Is there actually a piece of software that can do that for me or for my team members, so I'm not wasting talent on something that software can do?
I love that. I'm a big advocate for software first, and although my team probably hate the amount of different logins they've got to lots of different pieces of software, there is a lot of automation that exists in my business in 2021 that I'd never even heard of in 2020. There's lots of updates that have happened in the tech world with the boom of the online business world, and I'm sure that a lot of these tasks that are falling on your to-do list can be done by a robot and don't need to be done by you or can be done by software. And that's interesting. So you talked about VAs. That kind of lends itself to this idea of building on your team. Once you start looking at VAs, that's usually the point where entrepreneurs will at least begin to think about, maybe one day I can employ, maybe one day I can bring team in, or usually a little bit quicker than they anticipate. So we've got here some points that you wanted to cover that I would love to hear your thoughts on about building out your dream team. I think there are so many opinions around this point. I've probably done things very backwards to how lots would recommend, but yeah, I would love to hear your take on how to build your dream team as a business owner.
Absolutely. So to scale sustainably, we need to surround ourselves with systems, and that is not just internal processes, that is team systems, that is people, actually how we're actually going to build out a support network of the skills and the roles that we need in our business to allow us to step out of the day-to-day doing and into that sort of visionary designer role. And team is one of my most passionate things to talk about, because I love people and I believe that they bring so much to a business when you start to bring in team members and expand your business. And the first place is to start with, traditionally, when we go through corporate or we've come through that ladder, or even now when we look at it, we break business down into silos of sales, marketing, right? Finance, legal. And I always say, scrap that and look at the roles that you need to fill in your business. What roles are you doing right now as a business owner that you don't need to be doing? And how can you bring people in to fulfill those roles? And what skills do you need to bring into the business to do that? And the first place to start with is identifying that as the business owner. And then actually starting to look at, okay, who do I need to bring in to do that? And actually forecasting that. So building what I call your hiring roadmap. Okay, these are all the skills that I want to bring into my business over the next 12 months. And at what point am I going to bring them into the business? And so interesting, because you mentioned that people tend to get into that place of actually, okay, I'm going to hire a team member. Or the more common one I see is, I've grown quicker than I expected to. I don't have time to do all this. I need somebody right now. And this leads to what I call panic hiring. So we go, I need a VA, I need them right now. People go into Facebook groups and go, I need a VA. They hire somebody. Then they're like, why is this so hard? Why does this feel so hard? I'm hand-holding this is taking more time than I ever anticipated, because again, all those processes and systems are still in our head. And the team member we're bringing on is going, how would you like me to do this? And we're going, oh, I don't have time to explain this. And then a month down the line, they're thinking, this is much, I'm still doing a lot of the work myself, because again, we need to get into that mindset shift of actually, I can trust and I can hand out and I can enable somebody else to do that. And the chances are they may well be able to do it better than me if I can just give up that ownership of the task. So the first step is identifying the role, putting out your roadmap into actually who do I need to hire and when, and then setting that person up for success. Actually looking at what is the job description of this role? What do I need this person to come in and do a proper hiring process. So if you have, 2 or 3 recommendations from business besties or whatever around who could possibly be good for that role, interview them. And I don't mean in the traditional formal corporate sense of interview. If you want to do that, you can, but just checking in with them and sort of saying, are they a good fit for your vision and your mission of your business? That's the first place I always say to people. If they don't align with your values, you probably don't want to bring them into your business. And then looking at whether or not they have the skills, or even give them some people a trial task to do to see if they can actually fulfill what you need them to do in your business. And then on board that new team member. Don't just bring them in and shove them in the deep end with no armbands, hoping they can swim. Actually identify, what does success look like? What does success look like for you? And what does success look like for them? What is the benchmark for success? And how are we going to assess if we are actually hitting that benchmark? So what are the KPIs, key performance indicators or metrics that actually we want to be hitting every month? Whether that's scheduling 3 newsletters, whether that's actually booking in 3 discovery calls for you, whatever that looks like, actually set that out and then give them the information they need to carry out that role to the best of their ability. Do they need training? How do they need to do a task? You got to set that out for them, and it's easier to do that before they're in their business rather than after you've actually brought them inside your team.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I find it interesting the way you outlined looking for a team member, because I think a lot of people try to go down the route of they decide what they want to do for the business. So they go, okay, I want to keep growing. I'm loving this. I want to keep growing. I'll bring on a salesperson. Or they'll go, I want to take myself more out of the business. So I need to find someone who has my skill set in service-based business, especially. And like what I do, marketing, there is the opportunity to hire someone to do the do, so to speak, and to do the day-to-day of client delivery. And they kind of make this decision rather than looking at what they're doing every day and what can be taken off your plate. They just go, this is what I want for the future, so I'm going to hire X, without really reflecting back that idea of what do I need taken off my plate so I can act as the CEO that I need to be to build the business and to be sustainable in the growth of the business. So I love that that's your view, because I thought you might go down the route of hire for skills gaps or hire for things that you don't know. And yeah, it's really interesting to me that I completely agree with you. So we talked about VAs. What's your opinion on whether you should look down the route of VAs or whether you should look to bring on a team member, an employee?
So this is very much down to personal choice, okay, in terms of where you are in your business at the time. Most people in those early stages of business, when they just need that help and the support and they just really need to get things up their plate, will look at actually recruiting externally as opposed to bringing on an employee to help them free up that time. And it's becoming much more common in this space, in terms of especially the online space, of actually bringing on external team members to support you in your business, especially if you don't need somebody full-time or even part-time, or you're not actually quite sure just how much you need them at that point. And I genuinely say that is down to personal choice, whether or not you decide at some point that you want to build a business that has employees and you're actually an employer, as opposed to building a business where you actually work with external contractors to support you. There's still a member of your team. And I always say, it still means you're still a CEO, right? Whether or not they're on your payroll or whether or not they're supporting you externally. And it's very much a personal choice decision. But the key thing is actually about actually building team morale. So even if you have team members that are external to your organization, build that team morale. If you're having quarterly get-togethers, invite your entire team along, whether it's, because we know that generally if they're external, they're likely going to be goodness knows where in the globe, right? And I'm all for that. I'm all for actually having a workforce across the globe and bringing people together. So making sure, the key thing is just making sure that whether it's you're hiring people internally and putting them on your payroll, or whether they're external, that they're aligned with your mission and your vision and your values as a business owner, and they know where you're going and you're trying to take your business, and they are aware of what that looks like and they feel part of that purpose.
I love that. I think it's so important to have your freelancers, your VAs, your external staff be a part of your business. I definitely live to that, and although I've got internal staff members, I have freelancers that I use and they feel like part-time staff members in some way, and although that's not what they are, and they are external. I even had somebody call in sick last week and I was like, oh gosh, you don't have to call me to tell me if you're poorly today, like it's absolutely fine. But yeah, it's so important to build that morale, not just within the people that work for you or go on your payroll officially, but if someone's touching your business, you want to know that they are there for you and that they're going to be working towards the same goal that you are. So by treating them well and bringing them on board as a team member, I think that does nothing but do you favors into getting the results that you want from the people around you.
100%. It is that key thing. And the reason I also say, you know, people like to employ externally as well is because we're supporting other entrepreneurs on their goal of actually being entrepreneurs as well. So we're supporting, you know, our peers around us who are trying to achieve that same level of lifestyle freedom that we have. And I love that. So they can tune into that and align in that way as well.
I think as in entrepreneurs, we're always going to be the ones who go for shop local kind of initiatives and supporting other business owners, because we know how it feels and we know the difficulty. And when someone signs up the little happy dance that you do. So yeah, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Avril, for joining us today. That has been absolutely amazing. It's been fascinating to hear your thoughts on all of these things. What I will say is to everybody listening, please go and take a look at Avril on Instagram, which is at Avril Anderson _ if you have any sort of need for any further support. There's so many tips and tricks on her page there that she'll be able to help you with. And of course, get in touch with her for more information on coaching services and the like. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. I really appreciate you sticking around to the end. If you didn't know, this is an excerpt of a recent podcast that we did. And if you're interested in finding out more of what we do over on podcasts, you can search the Online Marketing Show in your preferred podcasting app. I'll also pop a link below to the Apple podcast if you would like to take a look. But until then, I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.